Welcome to Our Soul Whisper with Cathi Belmont and co-host Dr. Pat, a sacred space for self-discovery, healing, and transformation. At the heart of Our Soul Whisper is the sacred truth. When we pause and listen inward, the soul always speaks. This show offers a safe, empowering space where those whispers are heard, honored, and lovingly guided into full expression. Each episode invites you to be curious about yourself and the reality you're in, while gently reminding you that you are exactly where you need to be. Let today's message settle in your heart. Maybe even journal about it. And if something resonates, peace, clarity, or insight, pass it along to someone whose soul might be calling for the same. Keep listening inward. Your soul knows the way. Our Soul Whisper starts now. Hey everyone, I'm Dr. Pat, and I am opening the show up, as I love and have the honor to do, for the most incredible Cathi Belmont. Today's episode of Our Soul Whisper, holistic coaching, and by the way, let me just tell you, this is a word that explains what Cathy's gift is in the world. Holistic coaching and integration with Cathi Belmont. This is about self-discovery, empowerment, and inspired action. And today, the topic or the title of this episode, you may be thinking, like, how's this going to work out with that show title? The Sacred Crash When Fantasy Falls Apart. Cathi, the only question I have to get this rolling is, what the heck made you think of this one?
Well, I wanted to get to, well, thanks for that beautiful opener. And I wanted to get to just the realness of how it can be when we have these illusions that we create for ourselves to avoid pain at times. And then when we realize when that illusion bursts, and it can feel like a crash. And I just wanted to bring that realness in. And then of course the sacred is the sacredness of it. So it's kind of bringing the two together, which, as we talk about more into the episode, we're going to see how we can bring, two opposing things that, one we like and don't like, and how they can really come together. And it's, when that fantasy falls apart or falls away. And so I wanted to extend this conversation from our Dare to Be Real episode to really take it to the next level, and from the perception of the illusions that we create in our lives, because at times that pain can be unbearable sometimes. So
Yeah. And part of this, let's just describe for people the word illusion for a minute and what it means. And you have a fabulous quote you're going to share with us. So why don't you kick it off with that quote? Because I think this quote says it all. And there are so many, but this one really hits home, doesn't it?
it does, and it's a beautiful reminder for me, very powerful, by Immanuel Kant. He says, see things not as they are, but as we are. And it really, for me, it gets to the heart of, we live in our own world. We create our reality from the stew of thoughts, emotions, and beliefs and past experiences. It's all how we see the world and how we respond and or react. And it's really just coming to that awareness, if you will, and invite everybody to just consider that maybe what we're seeing, what perspective are we seeing reality? And then becoming more aware and understanding and having the empathy for the situations, people, and circumstances in our lives that we come in contact with every day.
Yeah, you really nailed it. I mean, one of the things that this episode is about a disillusionment. And I mean, I wish I had the rights to play Alanis Morissette's Thank You, because she thanks disillusionment in that song. She even thanks India. So I'm not sure who all she's thanking in that song, but I do remember that line where she says, "Thank you, disillusionment." And she goes through and she goes on to the song. So what you're bringing forward is feeling let down when reality doesn't match the dream or ideal you've imagined, clinging to how we think things should be instead of meeting life as it is. That requires a bigger conversation. So let's talk about that. You know, idolizing, perceiving. So it's a tricky conversation because, on the one hand, pretty much everything you've read, every scripture, every book, I mean, go back millions of years, thousands of years, right? There was always a vision of something, even from the ancient glyphs that were put on cave walls, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
So it's tricky about encouraging people to really think big out of the box. The greatest
Hmm.
ideas, Steve
Hmm.
Jobs, he was told he's a
Hmm.
crackpot, crankpot, whatever the pot is. But can you take us through this about what the lens is around this, please?
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll start off by just saying it's really, where are we coming from? Are we coming from fear, or are we coming from that inspiration? And I know we've had past conversations about this. Where are our actions coming from? And I think with illusions, especially with people and situations, we see them as we want them to be. And as I think maybe with people, maybe how they could be or should be, they have this potential. And we're not seeing the the wholeness of who they are. And so when we expect people to fulfill this fantasy, we get let down. And a lot of that comes from, talking from my experience, and I hope people can relate to this as well. We have this fear, or we have this out of control feeling when something doesn't look a certain way. And so we want to change it. We want to make it something else, as opposed to looking inside and saying, what's going on? Why is this making me uncomfortable? And not to say that we have to stay in the situation. There's that common sense piece too. But it's at the end of the day, when we go home with ourselves, what questions do we want to ask?
Mm-hmm.
With that compassion and with that empathy with ourselves.
It was interesting, and I said something to Linda this morning because, I think when you have a big dream, and for in your case, when you're stepping out and you're creating something that you had not done before, right? You don't know what you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And, part of what you're talking about is, what do you do with situations that show up? Look, I said this on one of the shows. I've been fired from every job I've had. And so, how long did I linger in disappointment or frustration? I could tell you not very long. I don't know how, I don't know why I have
Mm-hmm.
that in me to just keep going. But I will tell you, this year it's been a little bit tougher for me, right? And it really has to do with what you're talking about today. So I want you to really, talk about this, because frustration and disappointment are really low on the scale of frequencies.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you asked too kind of what the difference is too between this inspiration of, Steve Jobs, and then maybe coming from illusion. And I think it's a lot of it is knowing who we are. And if
Mhm.
it's that coming from that inspiration, there's this knowing with us. And it's also noticing situations and understanding kind of what you're seeing. And a lot of that is coming from yourself. And we can coexist with empathy and then keeping centered as well. But
Mm,
it's really coming from that place of, where is this coming from, and
mm,
questioning ourselves about that. And the title was really, I wanted to get at the reality of the rawness of this sometimes, because it can be, that burst of illusionment when we get into that sacred crash part. There's a powerful awakening I had, and it was a bittersweet of rawness. And
mm.
that, like you said, with Alanis Morissette song, thank you for that disillusionment, thank you for that awareness and gift. And when that goes from the head to here, I find, and I'm sure many others
Yeah.
find, it stays here forever.
Yeah.
And
Let's
so it's
talk
that.
about something that's part of the whole cycle of this, detachment and overengagement,
Yeah.
because all of that stems from pretty much the rest of what we're talking about. I also want to say that, part of the conversation that we're going to continue to have is about empathy. And, sometimes when somebody's screaming at you, or something's happening, or, you got a debt collector or somebody on the phone, or a boss that doesn't understand what you're trying to do, you can pick it, or a child. It doesn't matter what the situation is. you
Mm-hmm.
know, the hardest thing to do is to stop your own reaction and emotion and put on somebody else's shoes. But let's talk about that from where you sit. Detachment and overengagement. You know why I love this? I'll admit this, for my first in my 40 years of my life, right? My first, I'd say from age 10 to 40, I was detachment. I was all of those things. I
Mhm.
was numbing. So now you're going to tell me why.
Big question, Dr. Pat, and I'll do my best to touch the surface of it. But anyway, there's a lot of phrases out there, and I actually found myself saying some of them too. Somebody else's energy, not mine. I'm not going to be part of that drama.
Mm,
And I think a lot of that times it comes from this core of I don't want to be touched or pained by someone else's emotions, and I don't want to get lost in mine in that process of whatever situation you're in. And so I think we can gloss it and make it look pretty by saying maybe we're spiritually advanced or we're above that or um, some other reasoning. But it gets again down to that question, what is that about? And, a lot of it, I think, is I can relate to the detachment growing up myself. It was a survival piece. Too hard to handle those emotions. And it wasn't always a safe place to do that. And so as we learn and as we really become activists in our own life, our own wanting that, life gives us those opportunities to see that. And it's that willingness to go there. And it can be, some days it can be in easier questions, other times, not so much. But I think as we learn, if we can begin to shift our perspective into seeing what is this trying to teach me as opposed to why is this happening to me? And understanding, and hopefully, you know, um, many of us more are seeing that life is really giving us that stream of gifts. And if we can see it from that perspective, it makes this whole process, it makes it palatable at times. It makes it easier.
yeah. And also, can we just talk about the next part of this, which I think is the reason why we are talking about this, Cathi? It makes us, it gives us a key. So, there's this idea that there's when one door shuts, another one opens. You've heard that thing, right? I don't know if I'm saying it
Certain.
right. When one
Yep.
door shuts, another one opens. And by the way, both can be operating at the same time. See, that's the trick of what we're talking about today. You could have two things operating at the same time. You could have a door shutting and at the same time another one opening in parallel. What's the trick? Do you know that's going on? And what stops you? So let's talk a little bit about one, our fear, our feelings, and how we're touched by another's pain and our own. But also, we can go to judgment in a hot nanosecond, right? Okay, silly example, right? And then I really want you to take this home. Silly example. I put my holiday stuff out early. I got a big, like, four-wheeler. I'll have to take a picture of it to put up on the website. I got a picture of a big blow-up four-wheeler, right? So I just wanted to experience, but I wasn't the first in my neighborhood, the guy down the street. So people driving by taking pictures, right? This is my expression of it. Other people, a couple neighbors have said, man, you put that out early. And then I started to think, well, did I
Mm,
see what happens? So
yeah.
walk us through how this shows up in real life and how we look at this idea of the enlightenment and unconsciousness. Because unconsciousness is a thing.
It is. We like to kind of separate people. If we become aware of something,
Mm-hmm,
like say that door opening, and we have that awareness,
mm-hmm,
and then sometimes we can take on judgment of others saying, well, they aren't aware of this yet, or, why haven't they gotten there? And so we get kind of this, ego kind of pride thing when we become aware of something and we forget that empathetic piece. And even within ourselves, we forget that those other parts of ourselves that had those experiences, showing them empathy and compassion as well. And so it's really being able to relax into that uncertainty. And when you were talking about, this door opening and door closing, even the feelings that we have, we may we may feel sad or angry about what's going on, and then we automatically want to band-aid it with gratitude or some positive thought. And it's really bringing those together. And that's a lot of what I do in my work, is having dialogues with those pieces of ourselves, giving them that voice, and how can they work together? How can they learn from each other? And how can they integrate and be whole? It's not one or the other. I think we like to judge our feelings. We like to put the fear and the anger, whatever,
Yeah.
the uncomfortable stuff,
Yeah.
and we take for granted the others. And I think it's really being able to step back and experience them
Yeah.
as they
Well,
are.
well, I mean, I want to jump to the sacred crash because
Okay.
we've really set this up to talk about the situation, the context. But
Yeah.
now here it comes,
Yeah.
the sacred crash.
Yeah.
So tell us about this level of dismantling and what can we do about it?
You know, it comes when we become aware of something. So a few years ago, I was in a situation where I was living under this illusion of how things were. And at one moment, that balloon, that bubble popped right in front of me, instant. And I was like, wow. And in my 58 years on this earth, wow, that's when it hit, or
Wow.
a little bit
Mm.
soon before. So,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and I can jump all around here. There's really nowhere to get to. There's no end of this race, at least in my beliefs. So, you know, it can be a bittersweet experience, because the sweetness is going back to that lovely song, Thank You. What a gift for me to be able to see what's in front of me, seeing it as it is, not as I wanted it to be out of protection and all those other things and uncomfort. The bitter part was it was very painful, and it was very deep, and it was very raw.
Yeah.
And so it's giving, allowing ourselves to be how we can be in those moments the best we can be. And, you know, it wasn't until just a few weeks ago that I realized from this experience, I was still barricading myself. I was going from black to white, as I normally do sometimes, trying to dealing with things. We go to the extremes, and it's coming to the middle, seeing the love and the empathy and the compassion that I can have for that circumstance and the people, and being able to, through my own wounds and integration, be able to see in others theirs as well. And so it's a process, and I have to remind myself every day, what's the rush?
Yeah.
We have
Yeah.
infinity,
Yeah.
you know. So,
What's the
and
rush?
it's,
I'll
and
tell
you
you
know,
what the rush is for me. Let me comment on that because this I love what you said about that, because what the rush really is, what John J. Murphy talks about the difference between flow and resistance. So what you've let go of, hello, you've let go of resistance.
Mhm,
You're meeting it where it is. What a
for
gift
sure.
to share that today, Cathi.
Yeah, it's releasing, it's releasing that energy, and
Mm,
we can all feel it. You know, it's that there's, you know, this, we can bring the illusion, or maybe the ideal is idealing something with this awareness. We're idealing, you know, we can feel kind of hopeful. We have hope there.
mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
then there's awareness where it's really honest and awake. And
Mm,
so it's really making space for both.
yeah.
Because I think if we dishonor one, you know, we're dishonoring a part of ourselves that's just moving
Mm,
through this.
yeah.
And it's, you know, we know when that energy is stuck, when we're resisting, and we can color it, you know, to help us get by for a while. It's going to come back, though. It's going to
Yeah.
say, life's going to say, we love you too much to not look at this,
Yeah. No kidding. Well,
whether
I
it looks
mean,
like that or not.
well, let's talk about this is the disillusionment with the path. Let's talk
Yeah.
about the path because I made a comment to Linda today about, I mean, there's so much going on right now in my life, really at all different levels, but I'm okay. I'm okay. And so I said to Linda, really weird. I said, is there any place in scriptures, Bible, other spiritual practice where you don't have to become a martyr before you become a hero?
Hmm.
And so that's very telling, that statement. But it's about this here, disillusionment with the path. See, you thought your awakenment, you thought this what you're doing it, you thought, but if we don't face this, we will never be free.
No, no. And I think if we can let go of, I should have been there. And you know, this martyr thing, I actually think about that, and I know I'm going kind of off, but I'm thinking, well, you know, what part of us made that decision that it has to be hard? And I guess maybe, you know, things happen, but it may be going back to how we're perceiving this, you know. And so, you know, there's this shame of, gosh, I should have seen this before. I should have been there. And then it's, you know, thinking that it has to be some extraordinary event when we can really see these moments through our lives that can really be those teaching moments. But it's, you know, that resistance we feel, we can color it, but we know if we're really truthful with ourselves, if we dare to be real, connecting it with this, you know, we know. And just giving ourselves that time. And, you know, it can be messy. This process can
Of
be messy.
course. Okay, do you know any process of change transformation where we got to let go of something to open the door for something new that isn't a little bit crusty? So I want to talk
Yeah.
about this next part, you know, that you just opened up the door now. The door's open. So
Yeah.
what does it take to walk through? In your words, embodiment. That's what it
Yeah.
takes to walk through, doesn't it?
Yeah. It's just, I guess, just understanding it, accepting it, that, yeah, this is part of, it's kind of like, you know, you redo a room in your house, you know, if you want to totally redo it, you're going to gut it. And so there's a lot of mess in that. There's a lot of sawdust and things and all over the place, a lot of reorganization and disruption in your life. You got to go down there in the basement to use the restroom. You know, so it's all these different things. And then all of a sudden the floor goes in or the tile and, you know, things start coming together. So it's realizing that the stuff can be, you know, it can feel like it's falling apart. And it's not, you know, we can look at it as it's creating space for something new.
Yeah.
You know, we have a new painting we can paint, but it's really, I think, going to that perception and realizing that it's things aren't a race. That's my biggest lesson here. I think I got to get things done next week, you know, or yesterday, last week.
I'm totally
And
with you on that.
and so it's embracing that it's a remembering, and that I think helps us slow down. And just to embrace too that life gives us those times in our life where we think nothing is happening. And I like to look at it as a respite, a rest period. You know, we can go through these big emotions, give ourselves that time to rest a little bit.
I know in the work you do, that part of what you do with people is you help them understand how to honor our unique rhythm and timing and realizing growth is not a race, but remembering. And you've said it over and over again. But honestly, without coaches, I wouldn't be able to do that on a regular basis. It just wouldn't happen. And, you know, everybody's different. My rhythm's different than yours, but rhythm is so important. And what we're talking about is understand the rhythm of your disillusionment as well, because we have to know what to do. Today, my timer for my little blow up 4-wheel drive Santa isn't working. And I love that it came on in the morning instead of night. Linda's perspective is we got to turn that thing off. It's not nighttime, right? Two different rhythms,
Yeah.
and we meet in the middle. Tell
Yeah.
us now from where you sit. This is an amazing conversation. What do you want people to know about this and take away with them?
You know, I want them to know to honor their rhythm and honor their process. And one of the things that as I continue to grow in my practice and learn and work with clients, working with myself and with clients, it's a beautiful process. It's a win-win, and it's wonderful that we can walk together in this and to allow people to come up with their own awarenesses and their own integration. And coming from those aware places, it changes our lives, it changes our world. We respond just that little bit different. And so it's all about guiding someone to their own awareness. And that's the beauty of this work. And I love what I do. And I invite everyone to go to OurSoulWhisper.com and see what the offerings there. And I would love to have a consultation, talk a little bit more about it and see if it's a fit.
I want to tell everybody out there, I've worked with Cathi now for several months, and I will tell you, this is a real acknowledgement of her work, because this is the kind of work you don't get. You know, you can get out in the world and hire coaches to do many, many things, but this level of work to help you understand, one, there is a key, two, crashes could be sacred, and three, what do you do to bring it all back together? Cathi, again, give out your website one more time if you don't mind.
OurSoulWhisper.com, and I would love to connect with you.
Yeah. All right, everybody. That's it. Sacred crash. Get yourself up. Get your sled out there. Blow up your holiday. Blow up your holiday, your ornaments. We'll see you next time. Thank you for listening to Our Soul Whisper with Cathi and Dr. Pat. Tune in every first and third Wednesday at 11 a.m. Pacific on TransformationTalkRadio.com and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Take a moment now to breathe in and reflect on today's message. If it brought you peace, clarity, or insight, let it settle in your heart and maybe even journal about it. Remember to like and share this episode with someone who's ready to listen within. May our soulful echoes ripple outward, awakening awareness and deep remembrance. If this show touched something within you, share it. Let's create a world where most of us pause, listen inward, and allow our light to shine. Visit OurSoulWhisper.com for more.